Morning, guys.
Morning, morning.
So, Labour promised, they swore, that they would smash the gangs and they would stop the boats. First 3 months of this year, record numbers of migrants crossing the Channel, almost 6,000. Worse than under the Conservatives over the same 3 months last year. So whatever the government's doing, it's failing abjectly, isn't it?
There's no deterrent. There is no deterrent. And Rwanda was much mocked and derided. They should have tried it. The government, we'd spent hundreds of millions, the Tory government has spent hundreds of millions on creating a system where you could take these illegal migrants to Rwanda, have their applications processed, and one of the first things they did, the Labour government, was to abandon it. And there had been evidence that migrants who were in Northern Ireland were moving to Southern Ireland because they didn't want to be sent to Rwanda. So it was a potential... It could potentially... So there's nothing now. There's nothing at all, apart from this vague...
Let's not buy this nonsense.
Well, why didn't you try it? Because they were scared it would work. They were scared it would work. They were scared it would work. And then the Labour government would look ridiculous because they mocked it for so long. They were scared it might work. And other countries in Europe are now considering similar schemes.
No, they're not.
Similar schemes.
No, they're not. No, it's very different to assess people somewhere than to deport them on a one-way ticket.
You just want them all coming in.
It was a... Don't be silly. Look, we're talking about people here who are very desperate, which is why they're still coming. Rwanda was a gimmick invented by Boris Johnson that the government wasted a fortune on. It didn't act as a deterrent. It wouldn't work. It was ruled unlawful by the UK Supreme Court.
Under the Rwanda
it was never
scheme,
going to work.
Under the Rwanda scheme, because we use it as shorthand, but viewers might not know how it might have worked. Would the UK government have put everybody applying for asylum on a plane to Rwanda, taken them to Rwanda and then processed their claim?
No.
Or would... Right, so how would it have worked?
Because there was only capacity for a few hundred people.
OK.
And also under the deal, if you went to Rwanda, which I thought you ignore this, if you went to Rwanda and you committed a crime, then you would be sent back to the UK. So all you had to do was take a box of matches, start a fire, you'd be accused of arson and you would have been back. It was a colossal waste of money.
So who would it have processed then?
A few hundred would have been selected, but your chances of being selected... you're as likely as to win the jackpot on the lottery.
Can I suggest that we stop arguing about Rwanda?
Yes, exactly.
And ask the question in the here and now, why did 6,000 people cross the Channel in the first 3 months of this year? What is the government doing or not doing to address this problem? Let's just forget Rwanda's dead and gone.
Hang on. Andrew's point is... They're coming because there is no deterrent.
No deterrent whatsoever.
And Rwanda would have been a deterrent.
So what are they doing?
They're coming because they're fleeing persecution or they're fleeing
They're coming from Albania.
And they want to...
They're coming from Albania. There's no war in Albania.
I'll push this question until we get an answer. What is the government doing?
Nothing, Richard.
But sorry.
Waving them all in, giving them clothes, giving them a hotel place.
This is filthy. This is filthy.
£145 a day is what the hotel bill is a day per migrant.
Kevin, what's the government doing?
Yeah, but the problem before we almost get to have a rational discussion is dealing with all the smears and the inaccuracies, not coming from from Albania now, because there's an agreement on returns. They're coming to Britain because they're fleeing a bad life and they want a better life.
Why more arriving here now than ever arrived before over the first 3 months of a year? Why?
Have you seen the world? Have you seen what's happening around the world?
Go on.
I mean, have you seen the conflicts and the destability? Have you seen the fact that international aid cuts in Britain will make more people want to leave because they won't be staying in their countries? Completely short-sighted international
I think the government this week
cuts.
acknowledged that they aren't going to be able to shut down some of the hotel accommodation because of global instability. It's an acknowledgement that more people will come.
Translating the government's smash the gangs into a policy which is about halting the sailings is not as easy as coming up with
that because they said it again and again when the Tories were in power, again and again, and they're clueless because they haven't smashed a single gang.
Rishi Sunak said he would stop the boats. Remember, it was one of his 5 pledges. And he now admits it was a mistake to say stop the boats, because you won't stop the boats. You can try and stem the sailings. The government has got a better agreement with France now to try and halt some of the sailings because they are turned back. Of course
No, they haven't.
No, they have jailed some people. They have broken up the supply routes of some of the boats, but no, they haven't smashed the gangs. There's money to be made. All right, people traffickers, smugglers will make cash from desperate people. They will cram into boats and they will risk their lives.
There's nothing we can do.
And some are coming from Vietnam. What war is going on there? It's a very popular holiday destination. Some are coming from India. What war is going on there? What countries? These are economic migrants.
Yep, and those cases can be processed and those people can be returned. Now, there have been flights to Vietnam. You're going to ignore that because it won't fit your narrative.
Not enough.
But there are return flights now to Vietnam. But some people, and the majority of people who come across on those boats, once they are here, are found to be legitimate asylum seekers, refugees.
OK,
they win their cases.
Can I ask you, because there was a report in your paper last week that failed asylum seekers could be sent to migrant hubs overseas as part of plans being discussed to tackle illegal arrivals. The scheme would only deport people after their asylum claims had been rejected in cases where the UK would otherwise struggle to remove them. Apparently, this idea is in the early stages of discussion. According to The Times as well, the government is planning to approach countries in the Western Balkans, including Albania, Serbia, Bosnia and North Macedonia. But this, the original report was in the Mirror. So do we have a plan, do you think, to offshore some rejected asylum seekers?
No, like a Tory plan to me.
Sounds like Rwanda.
There is no plan, but there might be a proposal that if your claim is rejected in the UK and you want to go to another country, you might be able to go there if it's on a voluntary basis. But forced removals of people to countries that aren't their countries would be a breach of international law and would be morally wrong.
So what are we going to do?
We're going to be overflowing. That's what's going to happen.
We're not
going to be overflowing. Thousands are coming. Thousands are coming. How many already this year? How many already?
Nearly 6,000.
If we carry on at that rate, it'll be a record.
Let's have a little perspective.
It's a record.
Let's have a little perspective because people
hospitals are full, schools are full, there's no houses.
People spouting
the country is full up.
Are getting people really angry because it's misrepresenting the situation. People are coming.
Because you're in denial.
You're quite right on boats. It's a fraction of overall legal migration. And also, for instance, the Ukrainian scheme, Homes for Ukraine, came, about 200,000 people came. You could add all the people coming in boats over all the years since they've been coming, and you won't get to that 200,000. And yet there is this massive public anger about one issue.
Of course there are.
Because people like you are whipping
They
it up.
see all those young men getting off the boat. All those young men, where are the families? They're young men, nearly always, in their 30s, in their 20s. They're economic migrants. Because they are not fleeing. Not fleeing persecution.
What's normally happened, whether you're fleeing persecution, terror, or abject poverty and a terrible life, is it is usually one person from the family goes out, and it's usually male. Then they hope to make a better life. Then they either send money back, or their families try to come and join. It's not an easy issue to tackle. But we have very few people crossing illegally into Britain compared to other countries too.
But what about the gangs
This
that the
idea of
government
making
promised
Britain an
that they were going
exceptional
to
country
smash?
is nonsense.
The government attacked it from a completely different angle. Their attack was on the gangs. They said quite properly that the gangs are callous, immoral, people-trafficking swine. They don't care about the safety of the people that they rip off to put in these death traps to cross the channel. The government was going to go for them, and everybody gave 3 cheers for that. Nothing's happened.
Well, it has to some extent, but you're not going to halt a problem where people are fleeing terror and abject poverty and they're looking for a better life. And it's a backhanded compliment, if you like, to Britain.
Yeah, we're a soft touch.
People want to come here and make a new life. They want to work, get a home, have their kids educated in the end. They want to contribute to Britain. And let's not forget, migrants put more into the system than they take out. Don't let them work when they initially come. I think that is a mistake. While you're waiting for your asylum claim to be heard, you should be allowed to work.
Okay.
Well, that's got us going. Should we raise the temperature even further by imagining a scenario on Friday, let's say, this coming Friday, at a Labour MP's constituency surgery, and there's a constituent there who says, what happened to my winter fuel allowance? And the MP says, well, I know, I'm really sorry about that, but did you know that we're getting a nearly 3% rise in the Commons MPs? We're actually going to beat inflation. Isn't that good news? This is going to go down like a lead balloon, this proposal to pay MPs an extra 2.8%.
Yeah, inflation's now 3%.
OK.
So 2.8 is not beating inflation. Wages, I think, on average, are going up around 4%. consistently going up at the moment, faster than prices across the economy. That's good. But there will be a backlash, and I can get that.
It'll take effect, what, about 95,000 a year?
I get the backlash.
Almost 94,000.
94, yeah.
Yeah, so...
What's the average wage in the country? 38,000, 37,000?
The increase will take an MP's annual salary to £93,904, up from £91,346. The same week as the Chancellor is going to be slashing benefits and making cuts...
It's a terrible optic.
...to public services. OK, it is a terrible optic, but let me put it this way. We need good quality representatives in order for constituents to get proper representation so that they have time and resources to listen to their constituents' concerns, to sort out constituents' problems, to make sure that the economy is running away, which means we don't get high inflation and we have to make more cuts. So we need quality people, and in order to get quality people, you pay quality wages.
Yeah, just two things. I don't think welfare cuts and MPs' pay going up is a bad optic. I think welfare cuts are just wrong in themselves because sick and disabled people will pay a price. But I don't think there's any evidence that if you pay MPs more, you're going to get better MPs. You might begin getting MPs that are in it for the wrong reasons. You want basically people who become MPs who want to serve the country, want to serve their constituents in the communities. And I think paying them more will not necessarily get...
You agreed that there'd be a backlash. It started. Mr Smith on email says, morning, their pay should be frozen and that 2.8% should be given to the winter fuel allowance. They seem to make sure that they're OK while the rest of the country suffers. Vicky on X, what a slap in the face to our sick, disabled pensioners. It's unbelievable. Blue Moon on X, why should they get a pay rise? They don't deserve one. They failed everyone. And it goes on. It goes on. Huge backlash. For the prospect, it hasn't been voted for yet, but even at the prospect of a 2.8% rise.
Yeah, I mean, the pay rise has been recommended by an external body, but I just think it just looks terrible, particularly this week of all weeks. I think because tomorrow we're going to hear from the Chancellor how she won't say she's messed up the economy, but the economy is stuttered. There's no growth whatsoever. The tax rises are kicking in next month. We're seeing Morrison's announcing 400 job cuts. I think there's going to be thousands more jobs going, and here we are, MPs
Picking up Susanna's
to 95,000.
That you get what you pay for, and if we want decent representation in the Commons, we have to pay for it. What about the alternative argument, which is to say that if you want to be an MP, your motivation shouldn't be money. Your motivation should be public service.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it is. I mean, look, there's an argument. There have been individual MPs who have only taken the average salary. And they give away the rest, although with housing costs in London, they sometimes struggle if they're going to live here. Yeah. Although you do get some help with that in the system. But no, I just don't think paying MPs more... I'm not against the 2.8% rise. I am against the 5 billion welfare cuts. But I don't think there's any evidence that if we could double MPs' pay, and I'm not sure we will get better MPs. Look, we get who we vote for. To some extent, although the electoral system is weird, you know, the way I'd have electoral reform and a fairer voting system, but you're not going to get better MPs.
What about...
Just not.
OK, so you may think out there MPs are paid too much already, and therefore you'd think with an increase in salary they would no longer be accepting freebies. And your paper this morning, Andrew, has the Chancellor apparently... getting another freebie. Now, what's this story? Is she not allowed to go to the theatre? Because she's not allowed to go to gigs anymore for
Well,
free.
she can if she can pay for them herself. Yeah. So we know that she had £600 worth of freebies for Sabrina Carpenter.
At the O2.
With an unnamed relative. And she said, you can't buy those sort of tickets. Yes, you can. They're in a corporate box, but she chose to have a freebie. She went to the National Theatre on December the 27th with other at a cost of £262, and somebody else picked up the bill. It's a very, very bad look.
Who paid the bill?
Well, it just...
It'll be in the register of members' interest. So you have to register. I've not looked but
it was a freebie.
She accepted a theatre freebie over the Christmas holidays, is the wording in your paper. Can I just point out... She is paid her MP salary and she's also paid an extra £67,000 as Chancellor on top. So
she's on nearly 160,000. Nearly 160,000 a year.
Grand.
She's married to a very successful, high-flying civil servant. that is a household income which is way above.
Nobody's suggesting that she shouldn't go to the theatre. She can go every night if she wants. But surely, again, we talk about optics and the whole freebie thing, which tainted the first few months of this government's tenure. Surely she should be paying for her own ticket.
It feels greedy, not and freeloaded.
It feels stupid.
And you've got a period when just go through it. You've axed the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah.
You've said no to waspy women.
Which for many pensioners is the same amount as these tickets.
There we are. You said no to waspy women after saying yes to them in...
holding up
now you're coming with £5 billion welfare cuts. There's going to be a load of nasties in tomorrow's budget. It just doesn't look right.
And it's interesting because Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, was asked about for these freebies. She said, well, I haven't got time to go to the theatre, I haven't got time to go to concert, I'm a busy cabinet minister. Well, you'd think the Chancellor was busier than the Transport
I know, but come on, you don't begrudge her some time off.
No, I don't.
You have to buy your own
but
tickets.
she's got to pay for her own tickets.
And look,
I just find it weird, in the wake of the freebies row, how any MP or government minister could still be taking freebies.
But because if you're just sort of addicted to it, and people are always brandishing free tickets in front of you, and you fancy...
Why doesn't somebody in a private office say, how will this look, Minister?
The security issue does not work in a theatre, because I know the old Queen would go. I've seen other politicians go, and what they do is you've got your seats, and they're in such a position just before the lights go down, the curtain goes up, you go in your seats. So you're not sitting there as a target for it. No. Or anything like that.
Or you can be in a box. It's easily done.
Football's a bit harder because of some of the people you'll get sitting around you.
Talking of finances, we've got financial advice for the good people of Birmingham this morning from a lot of our viewers. Stuart on X says residents of Birmingham Council should refuse to pay their council tax while this bin strike's running. What are they paying it for if they're made to live with that on the streets?
Of the bin strike.
The rat population is the only part of Birmingham that's enjoying this bin strike. It's shocking.
Well, they've got Birmingham, right? It's a council that effectively went bankrupt.
It's in trouble.
They've got a very highly paid commissioner parachuted in who's earning a fortune, and they want to cut the earnings of refuse workers. So if I was a refuse worker in Birmingham, I'd be on strike.
As our reporter reported a few minutes ago, there are news crews and reporters coming from around the world to cover this story.
I'm afraid and this is our second city. It's the biggest local authority in the whole of Europe.
Settle it.
It went bust. Let's remind people it's a Labour-run council, by the way, and this is a terrible look.
Settle it.
They're going to have to settle, aren't they?
Yeah, well, of course they should.
We just can't go on.
Why are you going to be cutting the pay of refuse workers who aren't on a king's ransom, are they? Why are you doing that? It's wrong. I know they've got to struggle to get the books right, but you're not going to do it on the backs of people you rely to deliver a key public service. And, well, some of those people who would have been applauded during COVID, now they're being slapped.
Well, and these pictures are going to wind up residents because these are the striking workers doing a go slow in front of the refuse trucks, which are being driven by agency workers who are drafted in...
Strike breakers.
To do the refuse work. I mean, you might be on the side of the bin workers, you might be on the side of the council bringing in the agency workers, but my goodness, if you've got 14 days' worth of refuse outside your house and rats in schools... You definitely need something changing.
I've seen this happen in disputes before, and what we will find out when the figures are published, they have spent a fortune on the strike breakers, the agency workers, rather than settling the dispute with the people you're trying to make poor.
I remember in previous bin strikes, going back quite a few years now, the army being called in. Is that a prospect?
Well, they thought they'd cracked it with the agencies, but that hasn't worked.
What army? I know.
On their way to Ukraine, the peacekeepers. Would you mind?
I think that idea is bitten the dust.
I think they would be a huge revolt at the top of the army over asking squaddies to collect bin bags. Just settle the dispute.
It's terrible.
Settle it with the workers.
Can I ask, have you ever been accidentally added to a group chat?
I wish I'd been added to this one.
By a government minister or a security official, which then informed you, as a journalist, of strike plans in your military strategy.
Sadly
because
not.
Apparently top Trump administration officials mistakenly disclosed their plans in a messaging group that included a journalist shortly before the United States attacked the Houthis in Yemen. because this was the Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg.
Amazing.
He works for a news site. And look, apparently officials use emojis when they're talking about striking at targets. But never happened to you?
No, sadly.
No.
Including the Defence Secretary, the Vice President.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of
Chief of
nasty,
Staff.
a bunch of nasty amateurs.
But they've got a point, though, haven't they, when they say that most of the commercial traffic that goes through those straits is European.
Yeah,
and only
40%.
only 4% is American.
Yeah.
So why should America have to pay for the interventions against the Houthis?
Yeah.
They have a perfectly fair point.
Oh, I can see that argument. And if you just want to have Fortress America and you retreat inside just America, it might not be a bad thing actually. Now, when you look at what they're doing to Canada, what they want to do with Panorama,
they're going to have to
what they
tighten
want to
up.
do with
But the
Green,
point
and
is,
what they're doing to
they're gonna have
Britain,
to
which has
tighten
been
up
reduced to a
security, aren't they?
51st
They're going to have to tighten up
amazing
security.
that this has
Meanwhile, they are tightening up the border. And the Foreign Office, our Foreign Office advice for anyone travelling to the States has been tightened up. The FCO, Foreign and Commonwealth Office advice, if you are going to the States, has been revised. So it used to say you should comply with all entry, visa and other conditions of entry. The authorities in the US set and enforce entry rules strictly. Now it says you should comply with all entry, visa and other conditions of entry. The authorities in the US set and enforce entry rules strictly. You may be liable to arrest or detention if you break the rules.
Can I say, I'm not surprised to hear this, and I think it's already unofficially started. I went to America with Judy a couple of weeks ago. When we arrived, as we were going through customs and immigration, I've never had a more hostile reception. It was passively aggressive.
Have they been watching the programme?
Absolutely. No, it was notable and unusual.
Well, how did it change? What did the immigration
There were
officer say
many
to
more
you?
questions about why we were going on a holiday to Florida, and there were many, many more questions than I've ever been asked before in going to America about why we were going, where we were staying. Sorry, remind me again of why you're coming. Will you be doing any work while you're here? What is your profession at home? Oh, you're a journalist. Does that mean... It went on and on and on. I think we were there for about 5 minutes.
This is
if you're a journalist, it's more hostile.
Oh, I wonder.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It was exceptional.
There are people living in America, and they're legitimately and legally, and they're being arbitrarily arrested and deported. You're on holiday. You're coming back, which is good for you, but there are people who have homes there, they have families there, they're just being picked up and thrown out. Look, it's horrific.
But that's a warning. I mean, that's
horrific.
what happens when you tighten your borders. This is a consequence.
No, you can tighten your borders, but do you really believe in free speech? Do you believe in the rule of law? Trump's regime doesn't.
Up to 18,000 new social and affordable homes will be built to tackle Britain's housing crisis. That's what the government will be saying later on today, announcing a new £2 billion investment.
Charities are urging Labour to make the vast majority available for social rent to help ease homelessness. Housing Secretary Matthew Pennycook joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Susanna.
It's part of a £1.5 million house building plan by the end of the Parliament. 18,000, it's a good start, is a drop in the ocean.
Well, it's not the start, actually. We've already, in previous months, committed an additional £800 million in-year top-up funding to the Affordable Homes programme.
And how many have been built?
That funding is going to provide us with projects ready to start building, and those projects will go forward. This is an additional £2 billion in capital investment that will provide up to 18,000 new social and affordable homes. And what we're doing by announcing this new funding today is putting a down payment on future long-term investment that will come at the spending review. It's a bridge to that successor programme. But pulling it forward in this way will give providers more certainty, will allow us to get more projects, as I say, shovel-ready in the ground, building out and completing in this Parliament.
When do they get built?
Well, all of the £2 billion that we're announcing today will be allocated to projects that will start in 2027 and will have to complete by the end of the Parliament. It takes a long time, as I'm sure you know, to build out large developments in particular. But this injection of funding, along with that £800 million in top-up in-year funding that we announced in previous months, will go a long way to meeting our commitment to delivering the biggest increase in social and affordable house building in a generation.
So
and that
hang
is
on, you just said start building in 2027. So this aim of getting 1.5 million houses built, when are you going to have that done?
Well, these obviously aren't the only social and affordable homes being built Susanna. There's already homes in the pipeline. But we have got to turn things around. I think we've had this conversation before. We inherited a dire situation on taking office.
We understand the previous situation.
Yep. Well, we've got to turn things around.
Yeah. We know that. 1.5 million houses.
Absolutely.
When are they going to be built?
We've got a very clear target to build 1.5 million safe and decent homes by the end of this Parliament.
And that's realistic. We can judge you on that.
You can judge us on that. At the time of the
next general election, you can guarantee 1.5 million homes will be built by 2030.
We're absolutely committed to building 1.5 million homes in this Parliament. Let's be clear, Susanna, we know the scale of the challenge that involves. We know all the pitfalls we've got to overcome. It's an incredibly stretching house-building target.
Isn't it?
And we could have picked a far easier target. We could have picked 1 million homes like the previous government did. But that would not be commensurate with the scale of the housing crisis we face in this country.
OK, so...
And I remind all your viewers...
I mean, that is an extraordinary ambition. Anyone trying to get an extension to their house will tell you how long it takes to get the planning permission. So 1.5 million... And you think that's realistic? So by the next general election, if they're not all up, you can say to voters, we failed.
You can judge us on that milestone that's in our plan for change, to build 1.5 million new homes in this Parliament. That's what our manifesto said. That's what we're committed to delivering. And as I said, we know that there is a real challenge to doing so. It's a stretched target. We could have picked something far easier.
Of course.
Represents a 50% increase on the previous government's record. But as I say, we think we must do this, given the scale of the housing crisis in this country. And I remind your viewers, some may not be aware, as we speak here this morning, 160,000 children are homeless in temporary accommodation. So I am not content to come forward, nor is the government, with an unambitious housing target. That's why we've got this 1.5 million new homes milestone.
OK, and you've made that as an absolutely crystal clear pledge on this programme.
Yes.
Let's talk about pledges, shall we? Let's talk about manifesto pledges. One of the manifesto pledges of this current government was to smash the gangs and stop the boats. And this morning we hear that record numbers of illegal immigrants crossed the Channel in the first 3 months of this year, in numbers never seen before, not seen under the last government. No smashed gangs, the boats keep coming. There's a pledge that has not even come close to being lived up to.
Well, as you know, Richard, we inherited a dire situation when it comes to our asylum and immigration system. It's out of control. We've got to restore order to it and deliver lower net migration. But there's no overnight fix to this. We are taking action. The Border Security and Asylum Bill, for example, gives police and enforcement bodies counter-terrorism-style powers to deal with some of these, introduces new criminal offences. But this isn't an overnight fix, but we are bearing down on it, just as we're bearing down on the problem of asylum seekers in hotel accommodation.
Well, you talk about inheriting a serious problem. OK, let's take that at face value, but it's getting worse. It's not even holding steady or getting slightly better. It's getting worse. So there doesn't seem to be any impact at all in terms of the government's intention to smash the gangs. They're up and running and functioning very efficiently.
No, and as I've been very candid with you in saying, there's no quick fix to this. It's a serious problem, but we are taking decisive action, both in legislation and in other areas, to ensure that we have the powers available for police, for enforcement authorities to be able to bear down on the problem.
Those powers aren't working, well, in that case,
that legislation is going through Parliament,
working, are they?
That legislation, for example, Richard, is going through Parliament at this precise point in time.
When do you think we'll start to see the numbers coming down? And when do you think we'll start to see gangs being rolled up around the Pas-de-Calais?
Well, we have got to get these numbers down. We've got to take action. Every week, Home Office ministers are working to that end. We've just agreed, for example, new arrangements with the French to try and deal with this problem. But again, judge us where we are by the end of the Parliament in dealing with this serious problem that we inherited from the last government, who lost control of our borders, who gave up on processing asylum claims, who saw decision-making on asylum claims collapse by 70%. These are real problems we inherited. We've been in office, I take your point, for 8 months. We have taken decisive action and we will turn things around. But there's no overnight fix to these problems we've inherited.
OK, let's ask you about a couple of other issues that have actually got our viewers hot under the collar this morning. One of which is MPs taking a pay rise, £2,500. I know you as a minister will earn considerably more than that. Are MPs justified in getting a boost in their wages when everyone else feels like they've had a real terms pay cut over recent years?
Well, you'll know, Susanna, just as a related point, that we are taking action on pay. We are boosting wages. For example, people will receive up to £1,400 more through increases announced in the budget to the minimum wage, to the national living wage. But when it comes to MPs' pay, it's obviously set by an independent body, and MPs personally get no say on what increases that body determines upon.
But my question was, do they deserve it?
Do MPs deserve the pay rise that it's a...
We've got a table on screen at the moment which shows that the average annual salary for a teacher, £32,000, for a nurse, £44,000, pretty senior nurse, I imagine, police officer, £46,000, chief exec, £88,000, MPs on almost £94,000. Is that deserved?
I think your viewers will make their own minds up. I've just had a presenter on another programme say that MPs' pay should be doubled so that we can increase the quality of representation in the House of Commons. I think there are a wide variety of views about this. I think what's important...
We've just had a poll on this question on this programme, and only 6% of our viewers think that you should get a rise, and the rest of them, well over 90%, thinks that you shouldn't. Look, we said we had a couple of other points to bring to...
Sorry, can I just get the Minister to answer the question? Is it deserved?
I think what's important is MPs used to have a role in setting their own pay. They don't anymore. It's for an independent body.
Yeah, is it deserved?
To come up...
Is it deserved?
I'm not going to make a judgment on whether the figure that the body comes out with is deserved or not. I think your viewers can make up their own mind.
OK, they have made up their own mind. Do you agree with them?
OK. I think it's for that independent body looking at the evidence to set the increase for MPs' pay, and we have no role in it. And I think that's very clear to your viewers.
It.
No, we can't. No.
OK.
No. As I said, the independent body sets the pay, and MPs will receive that pay.
But you can't bring yourself to say that you think it's deserved, which implies that you think it might not be deserved.
Well, I mean, what's the counterfactual to this, Richard, that MPs' pay should be frozen ad infinitum? I think it's for the independent body to make a judgment on what's the appropriate pay level for MPs, rather than, as used to be the case, as I'm sure you're aware, MPs having a role in setting their own pay, which is obviously not appropriate.
Of course. The other question we wanted to put to you quickly, because this again has exercised our viewers immensely and people across the country. Does the Chancellor of the Exchequer have a tin ear as regards accepting freebies? She was in the papers over the weekend for going to a concert for nothing. Tickets worth about £600 about 4 weeks ago. She's in the papers again this morning, apparently having accepted £276 worth of theatre tickets for free. Given that this government had such an issue with the whole freebie question when it came into power, it really overshadowed your opening weeks and months. Should she be accepting these freebies?
I don't accept the Chancellor has a tin ear when it comes to this issue. She's answered questions about this on the weekend. I don't have anything further to add about her decision to accept this hospitality. I think what's important, and I think your viewers will recognise this, is that all hospitality is properly declared, and it was so in this instance. So it's for individual MPs and ministers to make a decision about whether it's appropriate for them to accept hospitality. As I said, the Chancellor has answered questions on this issue at the weekend, and I don't have anything further to add to it.
It's not a good look, though, is it? I mean, with cuts to the left, right and in front of you, a Chancellor accepting free tickets, it doesn't look good, does it?
Well, as I said, it's for individuals to make a determination as to whether they accept hospitality. The important thing, and we've tightened the rules in this area, is that all hospitality is properly declared and transparently declared.
Yeah, the Transport Secretary says she doesn't accept freebies. Do you?
Well, I haven't accepted, for example, I've just had a question on another show. I haven't accepted, for example, tickets from the O2 Arena in my constituency, because I think in particular, when it comes to things in your own constituency and there's potential for those organisations to lobby you as the MP, I think it's best not to accept tickets. But it really is for every individual to make a determination about whether they think it's appropriate to accept hospitality. The important thing, as I say, is that everything is declared transparency. And that's what's happened on this occasion.
I wonder if the Chancellor would have accepted those tickets that you've declined. But that's a question we'll put to her another time. Thank you very much for yours.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
MPs are going to receive a £2,500 pay rise next month. That will take their annual salary to £94,000, nearly £60,000 more than the average wage.
It is particularly controversial, of course, because it comes as the government is planning to slash disability benefits. And even more cuts are expected in tomorrow's spring statement by the Chancellor. So, do MPs deserve a pay rise? Broadcaster Daisy McAndrew says if you want the best MP, you're going to have to pay for it. And yes, give them more money. Columnist Owen Jones says the rise is obscene. Well, Owen, the Chancellor, probably if she was here, would say, well, wages are going up generally. Why shouldn't MPs be included?
Wages in this country have had the longest squeeze, not since the 1950s, not since 1900, since the Battle of Waterloo, real terms pay. I mean, if you look at it as well, public sector workers, these are the pay, of course, that MPs have set. An experienced nurse had a real terms pay cut of a quarter under the last government. You've had a slight increase since, but not even close to reversing that.
So MPs should wait until everybody else in the public sector has had a real terms pay increase before they should even consider paying an extra penny.
I think it's just most people would look at the fact that MPs have imposed real terms pay cuts on other people. And at the moment, as you've noted, they are imposing £5 billion worth of cuts on disabled people who can't dress themselves by themselves, people who can't use the toilet by themselves. MPs are now going to vote to remove support from them, whilst their pay, which, by the way, you said 95 grand, you're excluding ministers from that. A junior minister's got £125,000 a year. A cabinet minister's on £160,000 a year. That's in the top 1%, beyond the dreams of most people.
Daisy, it's certainly the case, isn't it? In politics, it's very often about the timing. It's about the timing of things. And is now the right time for MPs to award themselves, because no one else can give it to them, award themselves nearly 3%?
For the last 15 years, that power has been taken away from them, and it's their pay is decided by IPSA, the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority. So it's not them awarding themselves pay rise. And I've just always thought that our calibre, particularly in the last 30, 40 years of MPs, has gone down dramatically. I suspect that's something that most of us would agree on. And I think that if we did pay them more, we would get a better calibre. I think
Who would we get?
Well, I think that the young kids, the really, really smart kids, just look at politics and think, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to go and do a fintech startup. I'm going to go into the city. And those people that are recruiting the brightest of the bright, I just don't think will think that these are the kids that want to go into politics. I think we're getting
But I come back to my point about timing, with cuts to the left of them, cuts to the right of them, cuts in front of them, to give... All right, you say they haven't given it to themselves, but they could easily decline it.
But I think that's a red herring,
accept
Richard.
a pay rise
There will
now.
never be a good time. Politicians will always, by the nature of politics, be doing unpopular things that people don't like. So there will never be a good time to increase their own salaries. And also, I think we get really rich people going into politics now because they're the ones that don't care that the salary isn't commensurate. You know, a politician is getting less than a headmaster, is getting less than anybody in financial services of a similar authority. And a lot of them are getting younger and younger, which is also a bad thing. We want more experienced people.
I agree with the calibre has gone down massively. You know, middle managers and malfunctioning R2-D2s. That's our political class. If you look back in the 70s, forget about the politics, forget about what you think about the Tories or Labour, there was a better calibre. And in real terms, they're being paid £60,000 a year at the time, a lot less. I actually think the people we need more in politics aren't more city slickers and people who work in fintech. No offence to fintech people. It's people who are at the sharp end, people who know what it's like to suffer, people who know what it's like to be stuck on a social housing waiting list, people who know what it's like to go to a food bank. We don't have increasing of those people in Parliament. Look, take the NHS.
Why not?
Because... Good question. One of them is the weakening of the trade unions. I mean, take Nye Bevan. He founded the National Health Service. He's someone who grew up in poverty. He saw what it was like for other people to be deprived of healthcare, people who grew up with, and that inspired him to found the National Health Service. The trade unions trained people like him. They gave them the education, the training. That was weakened, and now we end up with... you know, lawyers. We do have lots of people who work in the city. I don't think that's the sort of people we need.
Rich people. So the latest research in how much it costs somebody to put themselves through the electoral process is about £34,000. So if you want to be an MP, you're going to probably spend £34,000 quite often unsuccessfully standing for election. So what I'm saying is that we are, by some natural process, only getting rich.
But you're confusing things. I agree with
politics.
you there. We should have funds to help people who aren't from rich backgrounds to be able to stand. It's very expensive. Take time off work, often people from professional occupation do. But that's not a salary issue. Look, if you're put off by £95,000 a year because it's not enough for you you shouldn't be in politics, and we should keep people away from politics who think that's too little. That's a good thing.
At which point we'll hand it over to you. We asked you at home whether you thought MPs should receive a near £2,500 pay rise. 6% of you said yes. I wonder how many of them were MPs. And 94% said, Archbishop of York has taken charge of the Church of England at one of the most turbulent times in its 500-year history.
Yes, Stephen Cottrell took over after the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, was forced to resign over the way that he handled a prolific child abuser. But Stephen Cottrell, the Archbishop of York, is now hoping to spread the power of prayer. He has a new beginner's guide to the Lord's Prayer at the same time that there is a slight uptick in interest in Christianity amongst young people.
The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, joins us now. We'll talk about this very interesting book about the Lord's Prayer in a couple of seconds, but let's deal with this issue of David Tudor, first of all. I mean... multiple allegations of sex abuse against him, stretching back years. And you say that legally, at the time, there was nothing you could do to actually get rid of him. But twice you reappointed him as area dean, knowing his record. Why didn't you pull him into your office and tell him his fortune?
Well, first of all, I was the one who removed him from office. So I suspended him in 2019, which led to his complete prohibition. And I did that when new victims came forward. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible to do that before then.
Yeah, but before that, he had a terrible reputation, and you were reappointing him as a dean.
So I'm really sorry that he was allowed to remain in office.
Well, that you allowed him to remain in office.
Well yes, but there wasn't anything legally I could do to remove him from office at that time.
Did you talk to him? Did you pull him in? Did you say, I don't think it's appropriate, I can't do anything legally, Mr Tudor, but I think you should resign?
So I, with safeguarding professionals, had all sorts of conversations with him.
What, face-to-face?
Of course I did. Also much work was done in the parish to ensure that the parish was safe.
And when you met him face-to-face, did you ask him to leave?
I believe he should have resigned.
Did you ask him to?
Yeah, I and many others spoke to him about these things, but legally we did what we could do, and safeguarding is always about managing risk and minimising risk, and that was our focus until that day in 2019.
Well, you'll know that you've been asked to resign yourself over this. You've come under huge pressure from quite senior members of the Church of England. They said it just won't do. It's too much of a stain, basically, of coming from the past, and it doesn't sit squarely with you running the Church of England.
So. One of the things that the Church of England is focused on at the moment is safeguarding and independence of safeguarding, which I support. And I think I'd just say to those who say, as you've said, you can't have it both ways. You can't, on the one hand, say we need independent scrutiny and accountability, and then call for people to resign without proper process. So the things you're referring to with David Tudor are the subject of an independent review. They will make their findings.
And if they thought you screwed up, would you step down?
Well, yes, I would, but I want very publicly to say I am deeply sorry about the failings of that case. I'm deeply sorry that he was allowed to remain in office, but what could be done was done, but there were some oversights.
Can I ask, though, this was an individual who had been banned from being alone with children. This was an individual who had paid compensation to a sexual abuse victim. I'm not sure how you could then twice reappoint him as an area dean.
Yeah.
Why do you say that you couldn't do anything else?
His office was as a team rector of a parish. That was the office that he held. The area dean thing was an additional thing which went with his office.
But I'm not sure I would want to be working with someone who was banned from being alone with children.
Yeah, so I agree with you, but there are laws in this country about, what are popularly known as double jeopardy, and so it was not possible under the law to take action against this
Even
person.
though he was banned from being alone with children?
People can't be tried twice for the same offence.
But you can be sacked for gross misbehaviour, can't you?
Some people have said that the big challenge facing the church is an HR rather than a safeguarding challenge. So I agree. What happened which allowed him back into ministry in the 1980s could not happen today. I received that those were the decisions that were the mistakes which I received from the past, and I dealt with them in the way that I was able to at the time.
We know that the Metropolitan Police, for example, and other police forces have issues with men who see working under the carapace of a police unit as giving them freedom to sexually abuse either children or women or whatever, and to behave corruptly. What is it about the Church of England that seems to attract a very similar kind of man?
Well, I take issue with the way that you're describing this. The Church of England is a safe place for thousands and thousands and thousands of people, day in, day out. It's in the forefront of providing care and support for vulnerable people. But men like David
Tudor use it as a cover, don't they? They use it as a cover. And Smythe uses it as a cover.
They do, as also happens...
Perversions.
As also happens tragically in other organisations, and that is an appalling abuse.
You don't think you've got a special problem in the Church of England?
Well, we are dealing with that problem, and we are seeking independent scrutiny of concerns and complaints that are raised. We are subject to independent audit at the moment, and you don't need to take my word for the fact that things are much, much safer than they've ever been. You can go on the website of INEC, the independent auditors, to read their annual report and see how safeguarding in dioceses and parishes has been transformed in the last 10, 20 years. But the mistakes of the past, of people like David Tudor and Makin, reach into the present. Some people like me found themselves in a difficult position of not being able to act when I wanted to act. But I would simply emphasise I did act. The reason David Tudor is not in ministry now is because I suspended him from office when I could.
You have written this book, which is a beginner's guide to the Lord's Prayer. There is evidence that younger people are having a sort of increased interest in Christianity, while the numbers overall are dropping off. But the bigger problem is faith in the church, isn't it? Not faith in God. So who is the person to take over the worldwide church, the Anglican Church, and put an end to the abuse and the failure to deal with abuse?
Well, as I say, I think we are already making huge strides to develop our safeguarding, and you can look at the independent auditors and see what they say to back that up. But it's impossible to say the Lord's Prayer without saying sorry. It's impossible to say the Lord's Prayer without committing yourself to do better. It's impossible, and I think we need a bit more of this as well, it's impossible to say the Lord's Prayer without also being compassionate and merciful to others about their failings. We need all three things. We need penitence, we need a higher and better agenda, but we also need a bit of compassion and mercy. And people don't come to the church because of the church. People come to the church because of Jesus Christ.
I suppose I would just say, in, your words, you perhaps can't have it both ways. You can't be merciful to abusers and also compassionate towards victims.
I'm not saying we need
abuse.
to be merciful to... Well, we need to be merciful to everybody, but we need to be... we need to be clear about what's expected. We need to be clear about what the demands are. We need to be clear about what right and proper behaviour is. These are the things that the Christian faith teaches us, and it's what our society is longing for.
Okay. And speaking of needs, in a word, do we need a woman as the next Archbishop of Canterbury?
We need the right person. I would welcome it being a woman, but we need somebody who will be a spiritual leader, who will reset the compass of the church around penitence, amendment of life, compassion, so that we can build a better world.
Okay. Stephen Cotterill, Archbishop of York, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for coming.
Joining us this morning.